gainers on the market, and the gainers were led by East African Breweries. East African Breweries is one of the cross-listed companies from Kenya. Matter of fact, the oldest cross-listing from Nairobi, after it was listed in 2001. That's over about 20 years of experience, 21 years of experience on the Uganda Stock Exchange. The company yesterday improved in price by close to over 2.06%, ending the day with a price of 4,596.9. This brewery has 100% stake in the Kenyan breweries. It has over about 93% of the Uganda breweries and about 86% of Kibo breweries in Tanzania. Of course, it's a successful brewing company that was begun in 1922 with over 100 years of experience in brewing. Now, the East African Breweries Limited is the fourth most valuable stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange, with a total capitalization of over 3.64 trillion Ugandan shillings, which is about 16.7% of the entire exchange in Uganda. When you look at their stock prices, they have been improving quite significantly since their ditch in about the month of July, when they hit as low as 3,000, prices as low as 3,500, and you can see that they're trying to come back to their initial glory, and you're seeing very significant improvement from the month of July through the month of August, and now in the month of September we're seeing a different picture as the curve, of course, moves downwards, and that is the price for the stock there on East African Breweries. They have a total of about 791 million shares outstanding, and their market capitalization currently is over 3.64 trillion Ugandan shillings. And the company has not had any volumes trade in a very long time, unfortunately, and just like most of the cross-listed counters that don't have trading activity. But sometimes, of course, price movements is due to factors outside the demand and supply of this particular stock. For starters, I want to remind you that the prices change depending on how willing people are to buy a particular stock at a given price. And this, of course, depends on quite many factors. People could be looking out for a company that is issuing a very attractive dividend. They could be looking out for a company that is promising in terms of growth and so on. They could be looking out for a company that is currently within the sector that they think is going to do very well. So people buy shares for different reasons, and no one can ever predict precisely how the demand for a particular stock could move within a specific period. However, for international or for cross-listed stocks, there are factors outside this demand and supply that do affect the price of a particular stock. And for these cross-listed companies, of course, many factors come in. The exchange rate matters. How the currency back at the domestic exchange against the currency currently on the cross-listed exchange onto which the company is cross-listed, how that currency is working or operating against the other currency. All those things do come into play. And then you also have the price movements on the domestic exchange. So if, for example, East African Breweries appreciates in price because of demand and supply on the Nairobi Stock Exchange, but in Uganda there is no trading on the company, and so the company's price almost remains stagnant. At the end of the trading session, you have generally what we call a reconciliation of prices. You have to reconcile the price of the stock on the Ugandan Stock Exchange with the price of that stock on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. And this reconciliation comes by, of course, factoring in the foreign exchange rate in there to see that the prices at least have some bit of relationship so that we avoid disparities in price for that particular stock on the Uganda Stock Exchange versus that on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. And so these are what some, of course, of the factors that make the prices to move despite the fact that there was no activity on a particular company there, especially for the cross-listed equities. This is one of the things that makes the prices move. And this is what happened for East African breweries on the Ugandan Stock Exchange yesterday. Now, moving away from East African breweries, we also had Nation Media Group. Nation Media Group also appreciated in price. We also had KCB Group, who came in as the second biggest gainer on the stock market. And KCB is a bank based in Kenya, and it's a subsidiary of Kenya's KCB Group Holdings, which is a bigger company there, and is into, of course, banking or offering financial services. KCB is listed on the Uganda Securities Exchange, and that is since the 19th of October 2010. KCB is traded under the ticker symbol KCB and currently is the third most valuable stock after MTN. And this company has about 18.2% of the entire Uganda Securities Exchange equity market, with a total market capitalization currently of over 3.9 trillion Ugandan shillings. Yesterday, the company moved up by over 20.96 Ugandan shillings, 20.36 rather Ugandan shillings, closing the day with a price of 1,325.96 Ugandan shillings, and that was a 1.56% price appreciation there on the Uganda Stock Exchange. The total shares outstanding currently are over 2.98 billion shares, and the capitalization is at 3.96 trillion, as I mentioned earlier. Now, looking at the last day of trading, the price appreciated to 1,503 per share. However, the company began the year with a price of over 1,414.32 Ugandan shillings and has since then lost about 6.25% of their price valuation, ranking them the 8th on the Uganda Securities Exchange in terms of year-to-date performance. Well, the 8th is not so bad, but not the best you can have, of course. But we can say we can close an eye for KCB because compared to other other cross-listed companies, the company has had about 296 shares volume that was traded on the 11th of August 2021. That was the last volume that the company traded. But there are companies that haven't traded in even more than a year on the exchange, and these are some of the cross-listed companies. So we could close an eye, but I would say, again, this is being honest and giving you my honest advice. It wouldn't be a good time for you to buy stock right now in KCB or any other cross-listed bank at the moment. You would rather go to the Nairobi maybe stock exchange and get yourself some stock there, because at the moment not much activity is there, unless of course you're investing for a very much longer term. That is what we would advise. But of course, if you're looking at capital gain, because the company appreciates every now and then, of course with losses here and there, much as its year to date is also still a loss, but it's still not doing very bad in terms of market pricing. Its price is quite a little bit more stable than many other cross-listed companies here on the Uganda Stock Exchange. Moving away from KCB Group, We also had Nation Media Group, which is a media house based in Kenya. Nation Media Group also came in as a gainer after gaining about 4.77 Ugandan shillings and closing the day with a price of 558 with a 0.86% daily price appreciation. The company is the 14th most valuable stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange with a market capitalization of close to 105 billion Ugandan shillings, which is about 0.485% of the entire Uganda Securities Exchange equity market. And at the moment, when you look at their trading, they didn't have any trades on Thursday, and however they have about 189 million shares outstanding, and the capitalization still stands at 105 billion. Just like the other cross-listed entities, it is still something really you invest in for a much longer time in order for a gain, but activity is still quite low on this counter. Moving on to Jubilee Holdings, who was also another gainer. Basically, all the gainers were cross-listed. Probably something happened on the Nairobi Stock Exchange, which we must definitely look at. But Jubilee Holdings also came in as a gainer, and that is with a gain of over 54.05 Ugandan shillings and a price closure of 7,862.5, and that was a 0.69% price appreciation for the company. Now, the company currently is facing a downward trend, generally speaking. And let's have a look at, for example, their stock price last year, around the month of November, the company's price was over 12,000. Yeah, so from 12,000, now we are talking about prices as low as 7,862. So overall, in terms of, for example, 1 year or annualized based calculations, the company has lost close to 40%. That is within a year, all right? And so this being very realistic, you have to be very realistic when you're investing in the stock market. Would you invest in a company that within a year the price has lost over 40%? Of course, yes. Some people will say, this is the time to buy because, of course, stocks are moving down. But you have to be careful. You have to calculate your moves very carefully, because 40% is a lot to lose within a year on a company that has a very inactive stock, meaning not many people are willing to buy stock here, at least in Uganda. So you might have problems as well getting your money back, or you're putting your money at risk in another form, definitely buying stock in this company. But there was a daily gain yesterday with a 54.05 price Ugandan shillings price appreciation, and that was a 0.69% daily gain there on Jubilee Holdings. This is an insurance company, of course, based in Kenya. It began in 1937, and it was introduced in Uganda way back in 1992 when it began its operations after the formation of the Insurance Company of Uganda. And so that is together with the Aga Khan Fund and the Economic Development and International Finance Corporation, as well as the Development Finance Company of Uganda, DFCU Limited. So it is quite an experienced insurance company. If you're interested in insurance, you could also consider investing in one of these insurance companies, but you must watch your steps, because the company has lost a lot of money on its price in 1 year. So it's up to you definitely to make the final decision there. Now, away from the top gainers, like I said, we didn't have any bottom losers. The companies only had to gain. However, we had top movers, and that's another item that is very critical when it comes to the stock market. The top movers are those people who have the biggest volume. Why do we look at these? Of course, liquidity. They give you liquidity and you know that when I buy this stock today, I know I can sell it tomorrow. There are such people, and of course we trade differently on the stock market depending on what we want to get out of it. And so if you're the kind that looks at trading, opening today and then coming out tomorrow, definitely these are some of the things that you should be looking out for. Who are the top movers and who have been the top movers within the last 3 months? You want to know the history of such companies. At the top of the movement list, we had Umeme. Umeme came in the first position on the Uganda Stock Exchange in terms of volumes, and it traded yesterday over 158,664 shares. Not a very huge amount, but at least the biggest for the day. The company traded at 200 shillings, and the price did not change, meaning the buyers and the sellers agreed to transact shares at 200 shillings. Remember, prices are determined by you as a shareholder and the buyer or the prospective buyer. In the morning, when the market opens at 9 a.m., the bidders put in their bids, and the people who want to buy shares, the people who want to actually sell to buy, actually also put in the ask or the asking at an asking price. And these, when you ask and you have a bidder agreeing at a specific price, we have a deal. And this deal means that that deal is going to put the price to the last trading, the price at which the last share was traded. That is the current price for a stock. And this is usually what we call the closing price, the last deal. What was the price at which the last deal was made? And this generally informs the public how much money people are willing to invest in the company and what people feel about a certain stock. The stock prices usually represent feelings, what people feel. If people feel like Umeme is worth more than 200 shillings, definitely they will take it up there. If they feel it's worth less than 200 shillings, they will push it there, depending on the demand and the supply of the stock. Now, the company's turnover yesterday, the company traded over 31.7 million Ugandan shillings on the Uganda Stock Exchange. And when you look at the shares outstanding, it has about 1.62 billion shares and a market capitalization of over 325 billion Ugandan shillings, which represent about 1.5% of the entire stock exchange, meaning it is currently the 10th most valuable stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Definitely many foreign investors have been so interested in investing in Umeme, and analysts say that this is because it is a company, of course, that deals in the supply of electricity, and electricity being a utility, it doesn't matter whether we are in a lockdown, whether the economy is bad, people still need electricity. You're watching this show because you're powering your TV, your smartphone, whatsoever. So foreign investors in particular look at this sector as a critical sector, and so that has kept Umeme's stock very strong. And these are some of the things that should inform you when you're picking a share. When you're picking a share, always look at the sector. Don't just look at a mere company, MTN, Stanbic Bank. Look at the financial services sector. What is the financial services sector doing at the moment? Are people yearning for financial services? Are there incentives? Are there things that should attract people to invest in financial institutions? If yes, then you can go ahead and ask other questions before you invest. But the first thing to do is to definitely get to know the sector. And so this is a utility service company. Of course, it cannot run out of electricity because people still need electricity in their homes, factories, and so many other businesses that run on electricity. And so this is a company that you could consider because of its sector. And that's why I'm always telling you on the show, when you're choosing a share, you must be rational. You must have a reason for choosing a particular share, lest you lose all your money and you don't know why you lost the money. So this company, Umeme, is dealing in the service, in the supply of electricity, and this is a utility which people need on a daily. So it is a stock you can look at and say, hey, I'm going to invest in this market because of the fact that it is a utility service company. And so we're seeing that the company within the last 4 months has been the 4th most traded on the stock market. And within this period, they have traded over 14 million shares on the company. And these are valued at over about 2.79 billion shillings that have been transacted on Umeme here. Umeme is also cross-listed, however, on the Nairobi Stock Exchange, and it is doing quite well as well on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Yesterday, speaking very directly, it was one of the gainers on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. So you're seeing that this is a very attractive company that you could actually rely on. But however, still things could change, and so don't say this is going to be the company that never loses or that only appreciates. Of course, things change. Sometimes the stock prices move down, they do move up, but it is something you can look up for when it comes to the long term. But recently, we've seen more intensified activity, and I can say on the 22nd of September, there was a total of over 1.2 million that was transacted. That was a good volume there for Umeme and so many others. Based on the quarterly reports for the past 2 quarters of 2022, the company has been the company with the biggest turnover from all the listed companies on the Uganda Stock Exchange. So it is something you can check out and definitely benefit from. That is Umeme stock for you. Another company that performed well was Uganda Craze, who was the second top mover. Uganda Craze had about let's see, 110,100 shares that were traded and closed the day with a price of 15 shillings, and that was a 0.0% change because the price remained at 15 at the end of the day's trading. The other company we had was Cipla. Cipla traded 18,900 shares, and Stanbic Bank traded about 16,400 shares on the stock market. Now, summarizing this trade, at the end of the day, we had a total of about 307,264 shares that were traded on the market, corresponding to a market value of over 35.5 million shillings. Most of these were traded on Umeme, who had over 31 million of these 35 millions that were transacted on the Uganda Stock Exchange. However, the day ended with an 83% improvement in volume and a 531% improvement in the turnover. That was a significant improvement, at least for the turnover, because of the Umeme stock there. Currently, the total market capitalization of the Uganda Securities Exchange is 27.1 trillion Ugandan shillings. And that is the stock market there in Uganda. You can learn more about the stock market by visiting the website of the Uganda Securities Exchange at www.use.org.ug. Definitely, you will access that information and more. We're taking another quick breather, and when we return, we look at the Nairobi Stock Exchange. What happened that led to a very significant drop in their all-share index and the decline in performance? We'll be right back. Stay with us.